All too soon there was a crunch of gravel outside as Uncle Vernon's car pulled back into the driveway, then the clunk of the car doors and footsteps on the garden path. "Get the door," Aunt Petunia hissed at Harry. A feeling of great gloom in his stomach, Harry pulled the door open. On the threshold stood Aunt March. She was very like Uncle Vernon, large, beefy, and purple-faced. She even had a moustache, though not as bushy as his. In one hand she had an enormous suitcase, and tucked under the other was an old and evil-tempered bulldog. "Where's my dudders?" roared Aunt March. "Where's my nephew Pooh?" Dudley came waddling down the hall, his blond hair plastered flat to his fat head, a bow tie just visible under his many chins. Aunt March thrust the suitcase into Harry's stomach, knocking the wind out of him, seized Dudley in a tight one-armed hug, and planted a large kiss on his cheek. Harry knew perfectly well that Dudley only put up with Aunt March's hug because he was well paid for it, and sure enough, when they broke apart, Dudley had a crisp 20-pound note clutched in his fat fist. "Petunia!" shouted Aunt March, striding past Harry as though he was a hat stand. Aunt March and Aunt Petunia kissed, or rather Aunt March bumped her large jaw against Aunt Petunia's bony cheekbones. Uncle Vernon now came in, smiling jovially as he shut the door. "Tea, March?" he said. "And what will Ripper take?" "Ripper can have some tea out of my saucer," said Aunt March, as they all proceeded into the kitchen, leaving Harry alone in the hall with the suitcase. And Harry wasn't complaining. Any excuse not to be with Aunt March was fine by him, so he began to heave the case upstairs into the spare bedroom, taking as long as he could. By the time he got back to the kitchen, Aunt March had been supplied with tea and fruit cake, and Ripper was lapping noisily in the corner. Harry saw Aunt Petunia wince slightly as specks of tea and drool flecked her clean floor. Aunt Petunia hated animals. "Who's looking after the other dogs, March?" Uncle Vernon asked. "Oh, I've got Colonel Fopster managing them," boomed Aunt March. "He's retired now. Good for him to have something to do. But I couldn't leave poor old Ripper. He pines if he's away from me." Ripper began to growl again as Harry sat down. This directed Aunt March's attention to Harry for the first time. "So," she barked, "still here, are you?" "Yes," said Harry. "Don't you say yes in that ungrateful tone," Aunt March growled. "It's damn good of Vernon and Petunia to keep you. Wouldn't have done it myself. You'd have gone straight to an orphanage if you had been dumped on my doorstep." Harry was bursting to say that he'd rather live in an orphanage than with the Dursleys, but the thoughts of the Hogsmeade farm stopped him. He forced his face into a painful smile. "Don't you smirk at me," boomed Aunt March. "I can see you haven't improved since I last saw you. I hope school would knock some manners into you." She took a large gulp of tea, wiped her moustache, and said, "Where is it that you send him again, Vernon?" "St. Brutus's," said Uncle Vernon promptly. "It's a first-rate institution for hopeless cases." "I see," said Aunt March. "Do they use the cane on St. Brutus's, boy?" She barked across the table. Uncle Vernon nodded curtly behind Aunt March's back. "Yes," said Harry. Then, feeling he might as well do the thing properly, he added, "all the time." "Excellent," said Aunt March. "I won't have this namby-pamby wishy-washy nonsense about not hitting people who deserve it. A good thrashing is what's needed in 99 cases out of 100. Have you been beaten often?" "Oh, yeah," said Harry, "loads of times." Aunt March narrowed her eyes. "I still don't like your tone, boy," she said. "If you can speak of your beating in that casual way, they clearly aren't hitting you hard enough. Petunia, I'd write if I were you. Make it clear that you approve the use of extreme force in this boy's case." Perhaps Uncle Vernon was worried that Harry might forget their bargain. In any case, he changed the subject abruptly. "Heard the news this morning, Marge? What about that escaped prisoner, eh?" As Aunt March started to make herself at home, Harry caught himself thinking almost longingly of life at number 4 Privet Drive without her. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia usually encouraged Harry to stay out of their way, which Harry was only too happy to do. Aunt March, on the other hand, wanted Harry under her eyes all the time, so that she could boom out suggestions for his improvement. She delighted in comparing Harry with Dudley, and took huge pleasure in buying Dudley expensive presents while glaring at Harry as though daring him to ask why he had not got a present too. She also kept throwing out dark hints about what made Harry such an unsatisfactory person. "You mustn't blame yourself for the way the boy turned out, Vernon," she said over lunch on the third day. "If there's something rotten on the inside, there's nothing anyone can do about it." Harry tried to concentrate on his food, but his hands shook and his face was starting to burn with anger. "Remember the form," he told himself. "Things about Hogsmeade. Don't say anything. Don't rise." Aunt Marge reached for a glass of wine. "It's one of the basic rules of breeding," she said. "You see it all the time with dogs. If there's something wrong with the bitch, there'll be something wrong with the pup." At that moment, the wine glass Aunt Marge was holding exploded in her hand. Shards of glass flew in every direction, and Aunt Marge sputtered and blinked, her great ruddy face dripping. "Marge!" squealed Aunt Petunia. "Marge, are you all right?" "Not to worry," grunted Aunt Marge, mopping her face with her napkin. "Must have squeezed it too hard. Did the same thing at Colonel Fobster's the other day. No need to fuss, Petunia. I have a very firm grip." But Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon were both looking at Harry suspiciously, so he decided he'd better skip dessert and escape from the table as soon as he could. Outside in the hall, he leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. It had been a long time since he'd lost control and made something explode. He couldn't afford to let it happen again. The Hogsmeade form wasn't the only thing at stake. If he carried on like that, he'd be in trouble with the Ministry of Magic. Harry was still an underage wizard, and he was forbidden by wizard law to do magic outside school. His record wasn't exactly clean either. Only last summer he'd gotten an official warning that had stated quite clearly that if the ministry got wind of any more magic in Privet Drive, Harry would face expulsion from Hogwarts. He heard the Dursleys leaving the table and hurried upstairs out of the way. Harry got through the next 3 days by forcing himself to think about his handbook of do-it-yourself broom care whenever Aunt Marge started on him. This worked quite well, though it seemed to give him a glazed look because Aunt Marge started voicing the opinion that he was mentally subnormal. At long last, the final evening of March's day arrived. Aunt Petunia cooked a fancy dinner, and Uncle Vernon uncorked several bottles of wine. They got all the way through the soup and the salmon without a single mention of Harry's faults. During the lemon meringue pie, Uncle Vernon bored them all with a long talk about Grunnings, his drill making company. Then Aunt Petunia made coffee, and Uncle Vernon brought out a bottle of brandy. "Can I tempt you, Marge?" Aunt Marge had already had quite a lot of wine. Her huge face was very red. "Just a small one, then," she chuckled. "A bit more other than that, and a bit more. Yeah, that's the ticket." Dudley was eating his fourth slice of pie. Aunt Petunia was sipping coffee with her little finger sticking out. Harry really wanted to disappear into his bedroom, but he met Uncle Vernon's angry little eyes and knew he would have to sit it out. "Ah," said Aunt Marge, smacking her lips and putting the empty brandy glass back down. "Excellent nosh, Petunia. It's normally just a fry-up for me of an evening with 12 dogs to look after." She burped richly and patted her great tweed stomach. "Pardon me, but I do like to see a healthy-sized boy," she went on, winking at Dudley. "You'll be a proper-sized man, Dudders, like your father. Yes, I'll have a spot more brandy, Vernon. Now this one here." She jerked her hand at Harry, who felt his stomach clench. "The handbook," he thought quickly. "This one's got a mean, runty look about him. You got that with dogs. I had Colonel Fobster drown one last year. Ratty little thing it was, weak, underbred." Harry was trying to remember page 12 of his book, A Charm to Cure Reluctant Reversers. "It all comes down to blood, as I was saying the other day. Bad blood will out. Now I'm saying nothing against your family, Petunia." She patted Aunt Petunia's bony hand with a shovel-like one. "But your sister was a bad egg. They turn up in the best families. Then she ran over the Westrel, and here's the result right in front of us." Harry was staring at his plate, a funny ringing in his ears. "Grasp your broom firmly by the tail," he thought. but he couldn't remember what came next. Aunt March's voice seemed to be boring into him like one of Uncle Vernon's drills. "This Potter," said Aunt March loudly, seizing the brandy bottle and splashing more into her glass and over the tablecloth. "You never told me what he did." Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia were looking extremely tense. Dudley had even looked up from his pie to gape at his parents. "He didn't work," said Uncle Vernon, with half a glance at Harry. "Unemployed." "As expected," said Aunt March, taking a huge swig of brandy and wiping a chin on her sleeve. "A no account, good for nothing, lazy scrounger who—" "He was not," said Harry suddenly. The table went very quiet. Harry was shaking all over. He had never felt so angry in his life. "More brandy?" yelled Uncle Vernon, who had gone very white. He emptied the bottle into Aunt March's glass. "You boy," he snarled at Harry. "Go to bed now." "No, Vernon," hiccuped Aunt March, holding up a hand, her tiny bloodshot eyes fixed on Harry's. "Go on, boy, go on. Proud of your parents, are you? They go and get themselves killed in a car crash. Drunk, I expect." "They didn't die in a car crash," said Harry, who found himself on his feet. "They died in a car crash, you nasty little liar, and left you to be a burden on their decent, hard-working relatives," screamed Aunt March, swivelling with fury. "You are an insolent, ungrateful little—" But Aunt March suddenly stopped speaking. For a moment it looked as though words had failed her. She seemed to be swelling with inexpressible anger. But the swelling didn't stop. Her great red face started to expand, her tiny eyes bulged, and her mouth stretched too tightly for speech. Next second, several buttons had just burst from her tweed jacket and pinked off the walls. She was inflating like a monstrous balloon, her stomach bursting free of her tweed waistband, each of her fingers blowing up like a salami. "Marge!" yelled Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia together as Aunt March's whole body began to rise off her chair towards the ceiling. She was entirely round now, like a vast live boy with piggy eyes, and her hands and feet stuck out weirdly as she drifted up into the air, making apoplectic popping noises. Ripper came skidding into the room, barking madly. "No!" Uncle Vernon seized one of Marge's feet and tried to pull her down again, but was almost lifted from the floor himself. A second later, Ripper leapt forward and sank his teeth into Uncle Vernon's leg. Harry tore from the dining room before anyone could stop him, heading for the cupboard under the stairs. The cupboard door burst magically open as he reached it. In seconds, he had heaved his trunk to the front door. He sprinted upstairs and threw himself under the bed, wrenched up the loose floorboard and grabbed the pillowcase full of his books and birthday presents. He wriggled out, seized Hedwig's empty cage, and dashed back downstairs to his trunk. Just as Uncle Vernon burst out of the dining room, his trouser leg in bloody tatters. "Come back in here," he bellowed. "Come back and put her right." But a reckless rage had come over Harry. He kicked his trunk open, pulled out his wand, and pointed it at Uncle Vernon. "She deserved it," Harry said, breathing very fast. "She deserved what she got. You keep away from me." He fumbled behind him for the latch on the door. "I am going," Harry said. "I've had enough." And in the next moment he was out in the dark, quiet street, heaving his heavy trunk behind him, Hedwig's cage under his arm.